Explain your DPRK take because people are eating for it. What? Eating for it? What do you mean? Oh, do you mean people are mad at me for once again misunderstanding something that I laid out fairly clearly? Mad at me for an accurate reflection of historical fact? Oh, how shocking. I saw this tweet go viral on the timeline last night, and I quote retweeted it. I'm actually so tired of white people, this person says. Why? Because there's this TikTok. North Korea is actually a beautiful socialist country with free housing and healthcare that's been battling U.S. imperialism for decades and not the horrible dictatorship the West has told you it is. Now, do I agree with this statement? No, I don't agree with this statement, as I've said time and time again. Having said that, however, here was my statement on it. Ironic since DPRK is, as a matter of historical fact, a direct victim of U.S. imperialism. So while this person has a rose-colored view in terms of being a beautiful socialist country with free housing and healthcare and, all this stuff, she is still closer to reality on that acknowledgement alone than every single American who thinks they pull trains and eat rat for breakfast. There is literally nothing wrong with this statement. There's nothing wrong with this statement. The statement is, while she is wrong on the wrong on how she views the living conditions, living standards, or the current governance of North Korea, and has this rose-colored view of what it's like to exist within the DPRK. She's right on one fundamental here, and that is the historic events that unfolded in the Korean War. And therefore, she's closer to the truth, at least on that fundamental alone, than the average American who knows nothing. Rosy take on DPRK, but pretending like DPRK and ROK to an extent, not to an extent, Republic of Korea as well. Korea, across the board, are victims of U.S. empire. In two different outcomes as a result of how we treated them is objectively factual. My response to these morons is always to remember they're internet idiots, and my information is from scholars in Korea. Yeah. I said, I'm not saying shit is sweet in Pyongyang, but let's not forget, if it wasn't America doing it, the bombing campaign in the forgotten war would likely amount to genocide. Then I said, listen to Blowback Season 3. Notice how you never explain why in cases like this. Just saying things doesn't make them true Lamau. Please open a book. Please. For the love of Christ and all things holy, in honor of the late, great Pope Francis, open a goddamn book for once. Okay? It's so sad. Like, like there's two ways to go about it, where you can say what America did had to be done, and that it was, you say it's imperialism, I say it's liberation, right? But you can't deny the truth. You either look to America's actions in Korea as wrong or right. But what a lot of these liberals do is refuse to look to America's actions in Korea at all. She's not propagandized, though. Yeah, people get publicly executed in North Korea for listening to music from another country. If you genuinely believe that North Korea kills anyone who listens to music, you're really, really bad at avoiding propaganda. I mean, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't fucking matter. Like, this is what I mean. This is the point. The point is, like, you can say anything and everything you want. You can say anything and everything you want about North Korea, and people will believe it. Bro, up until, like, literally 2 years ago, you could say anything and everything you want about China, and people would believe it, despite the fact that Chinese people freely travel to this country. What are we talking about? And they have internet. There are still plenty of people in America that think like, oh, they're eating rat in China too. What's really annoying about all this, what's really annoying about this is the anti-intellectual thought demonstrated by liberals who also ironically see themselves as totally above the barbaric nature of conservatives. But when it comes to American chauvinism, when it comes to Western chauvinism, when it comes to American empire, they basically engage in the same exact thought-terminating cycles, these thought-terminating cliches. It's so frustrating. They'll go, oh, dude, you said that? You're a tanky. You must love DPRK. You're saying DPRK is awesome. It's the best place on the planet. That's what you're saying. No, that's not what I'm saying. Like, I'm sorry, guys, but if you have, due to prior social conditioning, some existing resistance to learning about history, right? That's one thing. But if your immediate reaction is to go on the defense, misunderstand my point, and then claim that I am like across the board saying that the Democratic People's Republic of Korea is like this moral beacon and a socialist utopia, you are no different than an anti-vaxxer conservative. It's very annoying. I have a relatively nuanced perspective on this matter that pisses off a lot of Marxist-Leninists, as a matter of fact. They'll say, no, you're wrong. They are eating burger every meal. F you. It makes me so mad. Like the entire counter argument to anything I have to say about the evolution of Hamas and militant resistance against the increasing violent control that Israel has had over and the subjugation that Israel has had over Palestinian populations, everyone immediately goes, oh, you love terrorism. You love terrorism. The reason why I have to always say like analysis does not mean justification or analysis does not mean defense is for this reason. Like I will explain to you historically relevant points. And some people will literally go, nah, that means you are a champion. You want to do October 7th every day. Like it's so stupid. It's so incredibly anti-intellectual thought. No intellectual curiosity whatsoever. Very frustrating. Go live there. I don't even understand what point you're trying to make. North Korea isn't a hellhole with many human rights violations and extreme poverty. No, the point I'm making is, again, very clear. On that acknowledgement alone, the acknowledgement that Korea as a nation is a direct victim of first Japanese colonialism and then American empire, American imperialism, is not a controversial take. It's not. It's just a direct explanation of things that happened. You might look at that and say, I disagree because I think it was for the greater good. I don't think that. You might. But to deny that there was no American imperialism is to deny reality. It's so crazy. How is this any different than a high school teacher explaining like the basics of slavery and how the founding fathers had slaves, and then a parent hearing about that and getting mad and being like, how dare you bring that up? How dare you bring up that our founding fathers had slaves? There was great debate on the subject matter. They're infallible beacons of good and morality. It's like, it's no different than people doing the anti-CRT at parent-teachers conferences. You should know better and what hills are worth dying on and not. You should know that normal people will never be broken through to this thinking. Even if it's true, it's not worth it, in my opinion. Man, I don't give a Okay, let's say anti-vaxxer sentiment reaches the same level of mania, which can very likely happen in this country, especially with RFK Jr. now at the head of HHS. Do you think I should just drop the ball on that entirely because Americans are too stupid to recognize that vaccines are good? Or do you think I should still say the truth regardless? Everything that I've done in my political commentary career is that. You're saying sometimes it's okay to just not talk about the truth because people are too conditioned to refuse to understand what you're saying. That is crazy. Considering my worldview and stances, especially living in the United States of America as someone who is firmly committed to anti-imperialist thought, virtually every single thing that I have espoused, every single thing that I've advocated for the past decade, things that you now understand have become a part of popular sentiment. Israel-Palestine comes to mind. Greatest example that I could use here. If I had stopped somewhere along the way, and if others had stopped somewhere along the way and refused to say the truth, you would not have the sea change that you're experiencing currently on this matter. Why would I just give up? Plenty of Americans refuse to reckon with the damaging nature of white supremacy and how important of a principle that is played in the development, how important a principle that has played in the development
any headway
of the United States of America. Should I stop talking about that? Do you know the average person's perspective is incredibly transphobic? Should I stop talking about trans people? Should I stop trying to defend trans people and trans existence and try to actively educate people on and move them away from transphobic perspectives that they've maintained their whole lives? You can say this exact same thing, not just on North Korea, but on virtually everything I talk about. This is very important. I stand by my principles and I will continue to do so. This stubbornness is, I think, what makes me as successful as I have been so far. How can you claim to be anti-imperialist while supporting Houthis, Hezbollah, and Hamas? Are you just anti-Western imperialism? Brother, please understand the basic definition of imperialism. If you think that the Houthis, Hezbollah, and Hamas are doing imperialism, W-bait chat. Okay, oh my God. Good job, dude. They're not. They are a militant resistance group against settler colonialism, in this circumstance, Israel, and American imperialism. Okay, it's not a good bait. Hermit Hwarang says, I think it's insane for a country that killed 3 to 5 million Korean people to constantly use North Korea as a reference for a nightmare dystopia to describe their own society, which in actuality has been a real nightmare dystopian authoritarian mass slaughter paragon all along. U.S. soldiers literally put fire hoses inside of Korean women and turned on the water until their bodies exploded. I don't know about that part. Army doctors practice excessive amputations on thousands of Korean and Chinese POWs out of pure sadism. The baseline U.S. mentality towards Koreans is basically KKK. That last part I do agree with. They do. They did. The entire, it actually kind of gets lost in the sauce. And this is not like rad lib shit. Like the American military's attitude towards historically towards what they've done in the Pacific campaigns have been insane. Like actually, it's so racist. They use the same slur across the board, all the way from the Philippines, all the way to the Korean War and then Vietnam. Like it's across the board. They even use the same slur, the G word. Yeah, this is actually a new South Korea Commission probes civilian massacres by U.S. in Korean War. This is from 2008, but this is still an ongoing issue. I remember reading something about this recently, a couple months ago, about, I think it was Jeju Island. There's still so much. There's still so much that the South Korean government hides about its own history and about how with American backing, they put down uprisings, like populist uprisings that were taking place in South Korea, in the Republic of Korea, and how much people had, like, what kind of sentiment, what kind of popular sentiment was being expressed by South Koreans at the time that had to be violently squashed with insane extrajudicial murder. Gwangju uprising and Jeju uprising, yeah. A fascist, Syngman Rhee, his government carried out brutal campaigns against suspected communist sympathizers, leaving at least 100,000 people dead. In Daejeon, about 7,000 South Koreans are believed to have been shot by their own military and police and then dumped in the mass graves. This is some of the stuff that I talked about here. I talked about when covering the long history of Koreans rising up. If you recall, when the Korean population stormed the streets and stopped, like literally overthrew a attempt at a coup and an implementation of martial law by just straight up protesting. At the time, I explained to you that, like, South Koreans have had a long history of doing this. All this happened less than a century ago. For far too many people in the government, the military, and all the apparatuses of the state, it is their literal grandparents who ordered, executed, and then covered up these crimes. There's a direct line from the Korean War to the attacks on civil liberties under Trump. Executive authority expanded enormously during the Korean War. The first overseas U.S. police action, which justified later permanent wars waged by POTUS without congressional approval. Korean War censorship of the U.S. press was extensive. This is also a huge issue, yeah. After 1951, there was basically no independent U.S. journalism permitted. McCarthyism in the early 50s was fueled by the bloodlust of the war and the political fallout of the Chinese Revolution in Washington. It's true today with Palestine. It was true back then. Fascism festers in the colonies and then returns to the imperial core. The chauvinism and racism of liberals is just fodder for that fascism to thrive. Eric, friend of the show, Eric Hovagim says, I wonder if the side who used Unit 731 lead scientists to drop the bubonic plague on civilians and led the biological warfare efforts in the Korean War was actually the good guys. Still trying to figure this out. There's a lot of crazy stuff that happened in the Korean War, and I highly recommend Blowback Season 3 for this reason. They go into great detail about some of the atrocities, some of the defenses, Chinese involvement, of course. But ultimately, if you were to say, oh, was there any sort of imperialist interest by the United States of America in the aftermath of World War II to dominate Korean politics and to make sure that there was a bulwark against the growth of Soviet-style socialism in the region, and therefore they had to do whatever they had to do, which was to basically adopt the previous colonial framework that the Japanese had left behind, and use that with the creation of a puppet state that was incredibly violent to those who actually wanted to have a united singular Korea that was socialist, by the way, because the uprisings that I'm talking about are all against the Republic of Korea, against the initial puppet state that was presented, the puppet state that was created, and they brutally murdered all of those people. And the American government stood idly by and in many instances offered logistical support. And this is before the Korean War. Offered targets, logistical support. It was ridiculous. Yeah. And once again, as is the case in Indonesia, everywhere that American empire touches, all of the fascist puppets that we place into positions of power, they don't just kill the socialists. They don't just kill the card-carrying socialists, as a matter of fact. It always extends far beyond that. Just like Donald Trump's actions are not going to stop with anti-Israel sentiment. And you are a moron if you think that that is where it's going to end. If you think that you should be comfortable in this very moment, because Trump is simply going after the anti-Israel people and nothing else. And I don't really care about Israel like that. You are dumb. You are oblivious. You are naive. They killed anyone and everyone that exhibited dissent, all the way down to liberals.